The Minister of Labour, of State for Labour rather, Festus Keyamo traded words with members of the National Assembly on Tuesday over the National Directorate of Employment Recruitment exercise. Trouble started when Director General of the NDE, NASS Ladan, could not defend the 52 billion naira budgeted for the recruitment of 774,000 Nigerians under the NDE, which is to be done in the 774 local governments across Nigerians. Before I show you what transpired, a bit of what transpired on Tuesday, let me quickly introduce our guest. It's nice to have you, Barrister Abraham Jande. You're welcome.
Good afternoon, Judy. Thank you.
Good afternoon. And Barrister Kingsley Chime, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. Always my pleasure to be here.
All right, thank you. All right, let's quickly go take a listen at what transpired on Tuesday, and we'll return. We'll discuss.
So what am I apologizing for? What am I apologizing for? I have apologized for saying that we should go and hear everybody like young people.
Are you making another minister? Are you not getting here to get a minister? From this side, I want to move. I don't know if Musa apologized for this thing. He has been most apologized to me by directing us, and that apology to do it will know the appropriate message. Because started by I want Nigerian people. You know, we are representing Nigerian people. We are not hiding anything. So you need to apologize.
That he's saying it, if he's a fool, you that you are listening should not be a fool. The Director General of NDE is here. Yesterday, he inaugurated 20-man committee. And the NDE man said he's only aware of 8 people. But 20 people have been inaugurated. How did he come about the remaining 12? Sorry. Maybe those remaining 12 are his business associate. Do you think we allow that?
Why do we need 20 committee selection? He himself contradicted himself. That's what we want you to see in the public. He said this program is about laborers. And now they are putting in there market women. They are putting in there ASU. Will any you tell, are you picking people from the garage? Are garage people laborers? Those ones are engaged.
ASU who's supposed to be busy? ASU is supposed to be in class.
There are about 10 to 15% reserved for them. Yes, I've said it openly. So what do they need more than that? But the point is that they want to control the program. They want to control it, and I've said no. Except Mr. President says I should leave it. I will leave it. But they cannot control the program.
Very well, you listen for yourself what transpired. That was just a bit of what really happened on Tuesday. Well, what led to the whole asking Keyamo to apologize or not was when the lawmakers called for a closed-door session to resolve these differences, when the ND chairman was asked to make some explanation about the 52 billion naira to be used for the recruitment exercise. And he's saying it is the Minister of State that is in the best position to explain, and the whole back and forth with the National Assembly Committee was not really getting. And when the minister was told, let's go close doors, he insisted, let the journalists be here. All right, Barrister, let me start with Barrister Chime. You saw what really transpired. Are you pleased with the way the National Assembly Committee members and Keyamo handled this particular situation? What did you see there?
Yeah, thank you so much. When I watched this clip, or when I saw what transpired on Tuesday last week, I feel that it's a situation that should be avoided if parties had come for that program with open minds. But it does appear to me that both Festus and the honorable members of the House have their own ulterior motives. And if you look at prior to when all the committee members recessed into a private section, there were some innuendos, negative innuendos made against Mr. Festus Keyamo when the chairman of the, Director General of the NDA asked him how he came about other 12 members of the committee. And eventually when they came to private section, Mr. Keyamo started requesting for the cameraman to be present before he would answer such questions. I think both parties were wrong in the circumstance. First, I think it is inappropriate for Mr. Festus to insist that the journalist must be present before he could be able to answer some of those questions, because the law is clear that the National Assembly has the powers under Section 60 to determine the modality for how the program is going to be run. So it is not for the minister to come and tell them how or the procedure they are going to be adopted. So I think, but back and forth, it appears that it is an ego problem. And of course, most importantly, I think Mr. Festus Keyamo came to that National Assembly with this usual subservient mentality that other arms of government are, subordinate to the executive. So he came with the normal insistence that whether you like it or not, this is what I'm going to do. But I think it's totally wrong and it's totally unacceptable.
All right, let me quickly get your reaction to Barrister Chande. What do you make of what transpired on Tuesday?
Well, first of all, I believe the situation could have been handled much better. What happened there wasn't really a true reflection of what it should be. We're indeed operating a constitutional democracy, and every other person, including the institutions of government, derive their powers from the Constitution. On Tuesday, the Joint Committee of the Senate and the Federal House of Representatives invited the minister, which is in line with their constitutional function to, to investigate, in line with their primary duty, which is to make law. Now, sometimes some infractions, to help grow democracy, sometimes are important. I wouldn't want to go into the emotions or the sentiments of what transpired, but the most important thing here, we're on this program, this is democracy and the rule of law. And it's important to look at the roles played by the various parties. Were they carrying out their roles in accordance with the rule of law? If it is, then I think it's what, in retrospect, maybe we'll sit back and re-examine ourselves and bring ourselves in line with our constitutional rules. I'll leave it at that. All right, yes.
Very well. All right, let's take a look at the bone of contention. One of the reasons the lawmakers were actually not too pleased with the minister was when the Director General of the NDE could not defend the 52 billion naira budgeted for the recruitment of the 774,000 Nigerians under the NDE. The minister said his ministry was asked to supervise the recruitment by the president, but the lawmakers were not too pleased when the NDE Director General passed the buck to the minister that he could explain better. What did you make of that?
Well, like the Director General did explain, he has a supervisory role to play. In fact, he was also surprised how the minister came about the 12 other members of the committee. That was why when such questions was asked, he rightly referred them to the minister that he would be in a better position to answer that. But instead of Mr. Keyamo to answer the question, he started making other suggestions, other negative innuendos, portraying the National Assembly as corrupt. So he, of course, you could watch subsequently on that video where he came out to address the press. He mentioned that 15% of those numbers had already been assigned to the National Assembly, and they were trying to impose their own mandate on him. And I do not think Mr. Keyamo is right, with due respect to him. The National Assembly are stakeholders in the Nigerian project, and the recruitment exercise, even though I have my own reservations with the whole arrangement, but it is in the interest of Nigerians. So Mr. Festus Keyamo couldn't have insisted that he is the alpha and omega, whatever he says, that is answerable to the president and not even to the honorable members of the House. So I think it's totally unacceptable. It is wrong. What the Director General did was what every reasonable person in his shoes would have done. He doesn't know, you know. Like I said, it is an ego issue. Mr. Festus Keyamo feels that he is acting under the instruction of the president. But this is a democratic setting, like my friend did mention. You know, you must follow the process. The National Assembly has powers, investigative powers, under Section 88 and 89 to determine how the program is going to be run. If you look at when the female minister asks, female honorable member asks the minister, what are the performance indices? You know, how do you think that this project is going to achieve its desired result? And that question has not been answered. So I do not know why, you know, Mr. Festus decided to throw caution to the wind, you know, to resort to all these back and forth arguments. And of course, like typical of politicians, Mr. Festus Keyamo should understand that, you know, this is not, politics is not about activism. You know, you should be able to temper, you know, justice with mercy and know that such issues like this go through certain unofficial procedures. You know, we cannot just come to insist that what we are going to do, nobody is going to author it.
All right, you talked about the Section 88, and in defending himself, the Honorable Minister did say Section 88 of the Constitution already stipulates the role of the National Assembly, which is simply to investigate, and the lawmakers seeking to know the modalities, the nitty-gritty that will be adopted in carrying out this recruitment process is it's the National Assembly being overreaching, no, going beyond their responsibility. Do you agree with the minister on that?
Well, at this point, like I did say, we are operating a constitutional democracy, and you know, all persons and institutions derive their powers from the Constitution. And I think this whole issue came about as a result of misunderstanding as to the various rules of this, the various parties involved in the fracas. Now, the program in question here, you know, before we even look at, you know, the emotional, the sentimental side of it, I really don't want to go into that. But it is important to, first of all, go back to look at what the law provides, you know, and what the functions of these bodies are. Now, the National Directorate of Employment Act, if you look at it, this is the body charged, you know, with the responsibility, you know, to bring out, to design programs and to implement programs to combat mass unemployment. Now, if you look at that law, the minister in charge, which in this very case now, Festus Keyamo, has enormous powers, you know, regarding even the composition of the board, you know, of the directorate, the National Advisory Council, you know, the State Advisory Council. There's so much powers that have been given to him there. Now, so long as it has to do with the design and the implementation of, you know, the special public works program, it is the role of the executive to carry out this role. And I think that's the point the minister was trying to make here. It is true, Section 88 of the Constitution, you know, gives the National Assembly, you know, investigative powers. But that role does not encroach into execution or design or implementation, you know, of a program such as this. You know, the directorate provisions, you know, stipulate clearly they have to design, implement, you know, programs aimed at combating mass unemployment. And this very program is one of them. Now, so the issue has to do with the rules. So there was a misunderstanding of the various rules. Now, the National Assembly, one would admit, yes, they have the powers to investigate, you know, departments of government. But then, that role to investigate is limited, so long as it is to help them in carrying out their primary function, which is to make the law, and not to help in implementing the law. The implementation is a role of the executive, and the executive, either the president is doing it himself or through the vice president or his ministers, which the minister is trying to do. And if you look at that law, like I said, the minister has so much powers as to the composition of various committees. I do not see the role of the National Assembly as as far as it concerns, the composition of this, the committee here, if there is any issue as to perhaps maybe misappropriation of funds, then perhaps the National Assembly can come in here and carry out the investigative role and make the necessary recommendations. But like I did say, sometimes it's important for issues like this to happen so that people can sit back and then re-examine and then come to the realization of their constitutional roles. In this instance, I would think with what happened, the National Assembly, perhaps they went overboard. The directorate have the duty to design and implement. And I believe it's what the minister is trying to do. Now, if there is any issue as to misappropriation, there's a better way to go about that.
Interesting.
Okay, let me quickly add. Much as I concede that National Assembly does not have right to, implement government policies, it's important to look at Section 882B, which gave the National Assembly the powers to expose corruption, inefficiency, and wastage. So if the National Assembly is asking questions as to the essence of this program, I don't think it is out of place for the minister or the executive to say you don't have right to dabble into implementation of the project. They haven't gotten into the implementation. They appropriated such money. They have a responsibility to ensure that this money doesn't go into waste to fight corruption and inefficiency. So what are the templates you have to ensure that this program went smoothly as anticipated? I do not think that any person would think that the National Assembly went overboard. They didn't. They didn't. It is a conflict of interest. It is about who gets what. As far as I'm concerned, both the National Assembly and the minister, both of them are not even fighting for the interest of the masses. It's about interest. Who gets what? And by the time we get into the program itself, what does that program cease to do? Is it to curtail the unemployment issue in Nigeria? That you brought up, federal government of Nigeria, a government brought up programs like this that will run for 3 months, and you say you are fighting corruption. 3 months to pay, people 20,000 naira each for 3 months. That's 60,000 naira. What is 60,000 naira in Nigeria of today? Even beggars in the streets make up to get arms over 20,000 in a month, and we are having issues just to implement just a little project like this. And the truth of the matter is that it is that 50-point-something billion naira that had already been appropriated for this project is going to be wasted. I say this with greatest sense of responsibility because at this time, Nigeria is battling with a lot of issues. I do not think that programs like this is that doesn't have long-term plans. What, of course, are Nigerians going to do with 60,000 naira in 3 months? Let us ask ourselves the honest truth and begin to understand whether these issues, is it not between the executive and National Assembly trying to protect their own interests and of course try to bring their cronies into the game for them to be compensated in one way or the other.
Well, I would think it goes beyond looking at the effectiveness of the program. The program indeed hasn't really started. Like I did say, the National Director of Employment, has a constitutional mandate, given to it by the law. They are to design and implement programs. The programs might not look very effective, given the present times. But like they said, half bread is better than none. It is a role they have. It is a responsibility for them to design and implement. Now, if there are issues as regard, misappropriation or appropriation of the funds for them to carry out that duty, that's a different thing entirely. But as to whether the program is effective or is not effective, I think we'll be jumping the gun to make that conclusion. Right now, they are just at the foundational stage where they're just trying to see how the program will be implemented. Well, of course, it is said to be a dry season program, targeted at the people at the lower rung of the society. And so I think we should leave the issue of the effectiveness of the program and we should look at commending the government, at least for bringing in a program like this, and then see how we can help. Perhaps conscientize the people, even the people they are representing us over there at the National Assembly, to look at their roles instead of bringing emotions or sentiment into this. We're looking at the law, you know, what the law stipulates. Are they carrying out their constitutional roles? You know, that should be the question. The issue of emotions is neither here or there. You know, by the time we bring it to the base, which is the law, then we'll be able to say, okay, perhaps maybe both parties were emotional in their approach, but are they carrying out their constitutional responsibility? I think this should be, you know, the starting point before we go into emotions or sentiment. Otherwise, I mean, we'll derail the point.
Okay. On Wednesday, it got really messier, and consequently, the Senate announced that the two chambers of the National Assembly had ordered that the implementation of the 774,000 public works program should be put on hold until the legislature is properly briefed. Rising from the emergency executive session, the Senate also announced that the two chambers of the National Assembly had reached a conclusion to ensure that there is transparency in the entire recruitment process.
Well, I think that directive by the National Assembly is more of a political statement. Under what law, which law authorizes National Assembly to suspend implementation of such nature? They have no powers under the Constitution or any law to suspend such program. Of course, we know that the armed forces and of course the police is more of a subservient to the executive. So how are the National Assembly going to implement such directive? If the government decides to go on with the program, what will be the consequence? So I think it's more of a political statement. Of course, we may not overrule or wave aside the essence of National Assembly in a Nigerian project such as this, but I do think that what the National Assembly did by coming up with such directive is an emotional speech which was triggered by the attitude or behavior of the minister that appeared before them. So they were trying to get back at both the minister and the government to inform them that they're also an arm of government independent of executive. That is my take.
All right. The way many people have looked at this program is as if it is an exclusive preserve of the presidency, but we know we have three arms of the government. How then do you think the National Assembly, the lawmakers, let me put it this way, can be carried along in this program? Is it just mere informing them there will be a program of such magnitude where 774,000 people will be recruited from the 774 local governments? We know these people have their constituents. They are expectedly closer to the people whom they represent. So what role do you think the lawmakers can play in this in this project?
Well, thank you very much. Like I did say, the Constitution is the base point for any role one performs, and of course, the Constitution provides for how the National Assembly can come into, to assist in governance of the federation. That is where the oversight function comes in. They have oversight over government parastatals. Now, if there are issues as to the implementation, let me start by saying, first of all, before government programs are even implemented by the executive, the appropriation bill is submitted, which later becomes the act, and of course the various ministry, parastatals, and departments of government, come before it. The various committees set by the National Assembly. At that stage, they scrutinize these programs, right? Before... Is
it during its implementation or before?
No. Before the budget is even approved.
Okay.
A mention is made of, the 52 billion.
Yeah.
Of course, it has been provided for in the Appropriation Act, right? It means that, at the stage where, that money was appropriated for the NDE, the National Assembly must have been satisfied for the role for which that money was being appropriated for. Now, if there is any issue as to whether there's a misappropriation of what they had appropriated for that directorate, then it's a different issue. And of course, they have a role to carry, which is the oversight and the investigative role. If there's any infringement, they usually would carry out a recommendation. The committee will carry out a recommendation, and a resolution will pass either by the joint, either of the houses, the Senate or the House, and then a joint a resolution will be made where perhaps if there's need for any investigation to be carried out by the Attorney General of the Federation, that will be carried out. But I think their role stops there. They have the oversight, but the design and the implementation, it's a different role entirely. And they have done that role through the appropriation stage, where the various departments of government were called upon to defend their budget. I believe that was done, So if they have any other issues regarding, the implementation of what they have appropriated, then it comes through, what the Constitution provides for them in Section 88, which is that of the investigative and the oversight functions, to see how that program is implemented, whether it truly reflects the federal character or there are some elements of, misappropriation. And if there is any, they have a role to play. They have their recommendations to make to the AG, who will do the right thing in accordance with the law. But as to the emotional and the sentimental issues, I don't want to go into that because, it will not take us anywhere. We are here to talk about what the law, provide for these various bodies.